All right, good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the Newcastle City Council regular meeting for Tuesday, July 19. It is 7 p.m. Will you please rise and join me in the flag salute? Thank you. City Clerk White, will you please call the roll?
Deputy Mayor Sherlock.
Here.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Wrong mouse. Councilmember Villasenor. Councilmember Lacocha.
Here.
Councilmember Charbonneau.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Mayor Newing.
Here.
All present and accounted for, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any objections to the final agenda tonight? Hearing none, agenda is approved. Public comment. I will go ahead and open the public comment. Do we have any members of the audience who would like to speak? You will have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name and the neighborhood in which you reside. Go ahead. Good evening.
Has to be read. Okay. DJ Rollins. I live on May Creek, across the street from Newcastle. So, congratulations on the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Grant for the May Creek Trail Bridge. This is a much-needed link for the Mountains to Sound Greenway. Speaking of May Creek, very real issues continue to confront the May Creek Basin. May Creek residents still experience flooding, severe erosion, and sedimentation. You should have a map that says water features in front of you with green coloring. The green coloring is me. May Creek, you have 3 basins in your city, but May Creek Basin is the largest watershed in Newcastle. The green on this map reflects that I estimate 2/3 of Newcastle is in the May Creek Basin. Newcastle adopted the May Creek Basin Plan in the year 2000. Per that plan, the city is obligated to implement primary recommendations, and the one I'm concerned about is primary recommendation number 17. And this recommendation, this is just my little summary, I have a letter that's going into you guys. This recommendation requires densities in areas draining to May Valley be increased only if a qualified hydrological analysis demonstrates that hydrological impacts can be fully mitigated. I've already asked the city clerk to accept my full letter with my references and source documents and the map to be included in this record for this council meeting. And Mr. White has it. Thank you.
Ms. Rollins, thank you. And if I could ask that maybe upon review of that letter, if we can send the proper response to Ms. Rollins or address it accordingly, that would be great. Thank you. Any further public comment out there? Did you want?
Director Bronze, do we have anyone on the Zoom? Okay, thank you.
Did you? Oh, okay. You were just waving to us. Well, good evening. Okay, I'll close the public comment. Now we get to move on to fun stuff. This is the stuff I love. And I see Detective Vertner and Sheriff Ford. DJ, is that DJ out there? Okay, let's see. Oh, CJ. Wrong initial. This is very important. These are NPD's finest. If you tell Chief Houck that, I'll deny it. I am on recording though, so I guess I'm out of luck on that. National Night Out, whereas the National Association of Town Watch sponsors a national community building campaign on Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, entitled National Night Out. And whereas the National Night Out campaign provides an opportunity for neighbors in Newcastle to join over 38 million neighbors across 16,000 communities from all 50 states, U.S. territories, and military bases worldwide. And whereas National Night Out is an annual event promoting strong police community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer and more caring places to live and work. And whereas neighbors in Newcastle assist the Newcastle Police Department through joint community building efforts and support National Night Out 2022. And whereas it is encouraged all neighbors of Newcastle come together with police and work together to build a safer, more caring community. Now therefore, I, Linda Newing, Mayor of the City of Newcastle, proclaim Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, to be National Night Out in the City of Newcastle and encourage all residents to join in the celebration. And if I may have Newcastle's finest join me down here, I will present this proclamation to them. Thank you so much for your service. Stay safe out there. National Night Out is how I actually got into this whole public service city council thing. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. We already have, neighborhoods already reaching out and everything, we do it every year, so yeah.
Yep, you do it very well, and we look forward to it. And all you do is very easy. And above all, stay safe. I know you had a busy weekend.
We did. We're working on it, so we got some, pretty getting there, pretty close to it, so we can keep you updated on all that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
guys.
care. Okay, council comment. I believe I will start with Councilmember Lacotia. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good evening. Firstly, I want to thank our citizens who came yesterday to meet our city manager candidates. And summer is here, so we're going to have lots of activities, fun activities. Finally, the sunshine is out. So we are going to start with our summer concerts from tomorrow. It'll be there every Wednesday, and some of the council members are going to be around, so the citizens can come and ask questions. And there's also going to be activities in the Newcastle Library next Saturday. And lastly, I just want to say thank you to my parents who are visiting me from India, and that's why I just decided to say nice things today, so. Thank you.
Okay, we promise not to share anything we know about you. We'll keep it all under wraps tonight, just for you, council member. All right, council member Villasenor, what do you have for us?
Thanks. I would like to reiterate Councilmember Lacotia's thank you to all those who attended the reception for our prospective city manager candidates. As much as we are interviewing them, they are certainly interviewing us as a community. So I appreciate that we had a friendly and engaged group of people there, and I think we certainly put our best foot forward. So thank you, and it was a really proud night to be a member of this community.
Okay, council member Griffin, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. No comment tonight.
All right, council member Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. I only have one thing. It's just the next time we meet in this chambers, I'll have somebody new or I'll have an empty seat next to me. So I just want to thank Steve for his service to the city in the last couple of months. I've had a chance to work with him, and he's been helpful on a number of issues, and I really appreciate it, and I wish him the best. So that's my comments.
And council member Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, also thank you, Steve, for putting up with me. I wanted to tell folks, please vote. This is the last meeting we will have before the August primary. Vote, vote, vote. There's a lot of really important races on the ballot. Don't take for granted that someone will just go through to the general election. Be involved, make your voice heard. It's one of the, lowest, it's one of the things that takes the least amount of time, but also one of the most important. And then I won't echo, we had a really robust city manager process, but I did want to share that I'm really excited to be joining the Regional Transit Committee for King County. So there are a number of different committees we can serve the represent Newcastle on. This is one that's actually quite larger. It has all of the cities and the Sound Cities Association, the King County Council members, and Seattle City Council members, and I will do my best there to represent us well. Excited about that, and I am looking forward to more conversation tonight.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks to everybody who came out last night. It was really, I think, a good event, and I'm excited to keep moving forward with that process. So, I'll also reiterate what Councilmember Lacosia was saying about the concerts that we've put together. I mentioned at the last meeting, I put together a schedule so that all the council members will at different times, at different concerts, be available at a kind of a city tent so people can ask questions and engage, and I'm really excited for that opportunity, and we all get an opportunity to do that. So I'll just share, for the record, on July 20th, it will be Mayor Newing and myself. The next week, July 27th, will be Councilmember Griffin, Councilmember Villasenor, and Councilmember Lacotia. August 3rd will be myself and Councilmember Clark. And then the following week, August 10th, Councilmember Griffin, Councilmember Villasenor, and Councilmember Charbonneau. And then the last week, August 17th, will be Mayor Newing, Councilmember Charbonneau, and Councilmember Lacosia. So we all get a couple opportunities. And Steve, really gonna miss you. Thank you for your service and being such a great human. Really appreciate you.
All right, moving on, reports. Mayor's report, just a couple of things. Also an echo of that thank you to Director Eiskethorpe for his years of service to Newcastle and overall to planning and development and all that fun stuff you've done. I really appreciated a lot of the efforts you focused on during your tenure here, including the sign code, which was an amazing project I learned so much from, and I think we all did. And the downtown strategic plan, I mean, a lot of, good overlap with a previous community development director, and to come in and see our first project knocking at the door before you leave really gives me great pleasure, and hopefully it does you as well. You've worked with some amazing planners, and you have brought them up so to the point where, I have all the confidence and faith in their talent in the world, and you've done a lot for their growth, and I appreciate that. So thank you so much. I wish you a very wonderful, fun-filled retirement with lots of rest. You know where we are. Please come back and visit. We're here, the first and third Tuesday. We take public comment about how you can tell us about your travels and other fun things you're doing, so. You still get 3 minutes. All right. Council committees, Finance Committee?
Finance Committee is meeting on Thursday. We'll continue to work on the budget schedule and other typical business of Finance Committee, so that is on Thursday. Have more to say about it in the following 4 weeks after that. So, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Salary and Benefits Committee has not met. Community Activities Committee, I do not see Chair Majors in the audience. Is she in the virtual? Okay. But you have a report from them in your packet. And regional committees, any regional committees. I can give you a quick overview of the PIC, whereas we voted on the Clean Water Act, or the Clean Water Plan, and that was approved unanimously. Other than that, it was a pretty calm meeting. We're still in the process of hiring an executive director for SCA. City Manager, City Manager Larson, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Mayor. We've got several construction projects that are going on or just starting. That's in the report. For any further details, I'm sure that Jeff would be happy to answer any questions on any updates. The Trailey Park playground has unfortunately been closed due to some muddy conditions and insufficient park levels. But I know that city crews are working on that, Jeff, get it hopefully back up to.
Not yet, but that's planned for this, before the end of the season.
Okay, thank you. And then the southeast May Creek Park Drive construction continues. Is there a status report on that, Jeff, as of Monday? I know there was going to be some changes.
Right, so currently, the roadway opened about an hour late, but it opened around 8 or 8:30 Monday morning, but it's currently 24 hours a day restricted to single lane alternating traffic. There are temporary traffic signals controlling traffic, and it's gravel today. Last I heard, it was supposed to be paved on Thursday. But there's this wrinkle that the roundabout, part of the roundabout is outside of current right-of-way, and the developer's insurance company just last week said, well, we're not gonna allow people to go onto that private property. So until that gets resolved, there's gonna be alternating one-way traffic on the roundabout. So more to come on that, but hopefully we'll get that resolved sooner rather than later. But at least for the foreseeable few weeks while the roundabout construction is progressing, it'll have that two-way alternating traffic. Times like right now, the delay is only about 2 or 3 minutes, the cycle of the traffic, but during the day when they're actively constructing, it can be up to 15 minutes or more. So avoid the area during the day if at all possible.
Very good. And then we got some staffing updates. Riley Braceland just joined our crew as the newest seasonal maintenance worker. We are still working on the background information for the new events and recreation coordinator. That is going well, I understand, but it's going to take a little bit longer. Senior planner, we're still under recruitment for that. I'll get to some more details about that in a minute. Community development director, the first review was moved out to next week, and we're ready to, if necessary, move on that to ensure that staff has some confidence in what I'm doing as well as what we're doing for staffing. But I'll hopefully have more information next week on that as we continue to look at the applicants and the candidates. But I do want to assure everyone that we'll have some type of a plan in place before Steve leaves. The Parks and Trails planner, that's under recruitment as well. Speaking of the senior planner and the Parks and Trail planner, Julie Casada, her last day was last Thursday. Dave Vandewey, the senior planner's last day was last Friday. But in a stroke of good luck, both of these folks have agreed to work under a services agreement of sorts. Julie helping us with some critical pieces that I think Jeff perhaps could share a little more detail if he's got that information offhand. I wasn't sure exactly what the nature of that was.
If you're interested, I certainly can. It's I wouldn't necessarily call it critical work, but it's work that she just wasn't able to get to because of all the other critical work. So she's going to be working on documenting the trail easements as well as an inventory of the trail bollards, the missing trail bollards, and the trail bollard signs that are needed.
Thanks, Jeff. Didn't mean to catch you off guard there.
No, fine. And while I've got the mic, the events and recreation coordinator position, the background check has concluded, and she is scheduled to start on the 16th of August. She had some other commitments, so she wasn't able to start sooner. And she's coming in on August 9th for a kind of a tour and to do some of the HR paperwork.
Thanks for that update, Jeff. And then with Dave Vandewey's position, on or about August 1st, after Dave has been able to make his transition, he is going to do a scope of work under a consulting contract for us, and he's going to keep some of the main projects he had, which is going to be obviously of great benefit to us, and we really do appreciate his willingness to do that. And then last week we had another retirement. Unfortunately, the building inspector, Jack Helm, his last day will be July 29th. I can't say that was completely unexpected, but it had been in the works for some time. But in order to ensure that we continue to have building inspection services, we worked with with Crystal Kolke, one of our consultants, along with a company called Safe Built, who will be providing contract services for building inspections through on or about August 19th. And in the meantime, I'll be working with Steve and perhaps Sarah, and with obviously with Crystal Kolke as well as Safe Built, to perhaps evaluate our inspection services and develop a plan for after that August 19th date. And we'll have more information as we continue along the path there. Of course, everyone's welcome to it, but I'm delighted to as well contribute to the idea that we're going to have some summer concerts back on the docket. Looking forward to those starting up again tomorrow. And they've got the Art Walk in Newcastle Commons this weekend on July 23rd. They've got a walking tour of the historical Newcastle Cemetery on July 30th. That sounds interesting. Of course, National Night Out has already been spoken to. And then along with the other concerts, there's going to be a storytelling at Lake Bourne Park with the Newcastle Library and the Newcastle Arts Council on August 16th. And there's two other issues I want to mention. They were not on your city manager report, but one just came to me just yesterday, I believe. But I want Don Palmer, our finance director, to speak briefly to the Government Finance Officers Association. We've received another award for our budgeting document. Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, so Government Finance Officers Association has an award program that the City of Newcastle's participated in for years. I was pretty proud of this particular award because we did it with short staff. We did it with training of our new senior accountant. And while because I know some folks at GFOA, we were able to extend it a month to make sure that training transpired. The document is a reflection of strict guidelines that are done by GFOA, and they meet certain criteria for transparency. The budget document excels as a financial plan, an operations plan, and a communication gap tool. So with that, it meets the highest standards, and I'm proud of that award, as the city should be as well. And one more thing about that award is that it helps maintain our AAA minus bond rating. So we actually get a discount on our bonds when we applied for that originally, and we want to maintain that award. So glad to have that happen and actually save citizens taxpayer dollars.
Great. I want to thank Don and his staff. They've done a great job with that document.
I may mention something else. We also had a realignment in our staffing, and we promoted our administrative assistant to the accounting technician. I'm pretty proud of Adriana Bretz. She has taken 3 accounting classes and excelled in all 3 of those, and I had encouraged that. And so that is happening. Maria Lindberg also had taken an accounting class last quarter, spring quarter, and she excelled in that class as well. So proud of the staff.
Thanks, Don. And it's also well earned on Adriana's part. Now I'm going to recognize Steve Osgothorpe as well. In the little time I've been here, I've been totally impressed with his experience, but also the demeanor he brings and the temperament he brings to the position. And last week, as an example, we were at the chamber function, and Steve was able to present some of his thoughts about sense of place. I think that was how it was described. But I made a point afterward to express to him my pleasure in hearing that. It was very interesting ideas about his ideas about sense of place, and he showed some really good examples. But he also showed a few that obviously would be apropos to Newcastle. And I asked him immediately if he'd be willing to come back after he's officially retired and make a presentation to council in a study session and talk about perhaps some development and redevelopment ideas. I think they're very worth your while to hear. And but anyway, in a nod to Steve, I've asked him, and he's asked as well, but I want him to speak to some of his legacy here. So without further ado, I want to introduce Steve. Thanks.
All the years I've been here, I've never stood at this podium. So I'm going to take the opportunity. I feel a little more comfortable in the circumstance. You know, I've never really thought of what my parting comments would be when I finish my career, and here I am. it's probably not going to be conventional, so I hope you'll bear with me. I do want to, and I'm not going to talk about planning and zoning and all that kind of stuff. That's just not what's on my mind, and I feel burdened by some other things I'd like to talk about. I do, first of all, want to, though, thank my staff. They're a great staff. I hope you know what wonderful, dedicated people you have working for the city of Newcastle. It's not just my staff, it's all staff. I've just been so impressed by what they accomplish and their dedication to the city, to us, to you, and I want to thank them publicly. I appreciate and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. I've tried to serve with professionalism and integrity. To be honest, in terms of my professional skills, I'm increasingly frustrated with all the gizzies and the gazzies of emerging technologies. And I find myself stubbornly clinging to bygone years. I was taught the ethic of work in my younger years, and I was sold candy to earn money for band trips when I was in the marching band. I collected and traded in pop bottles. I shoveled sidewalks for people in the winter. And you'd see me in the summertime pushing my lawnmower up and down the sidewalks of my neighborhood, knocking on doors to see if I could mow their lawn for $1. And that's what I did. I remember one particular lawn mowing incident. These people had this little watchdog, and I was a little nervous to go up to the door, but I did, and she assured me that she'd keep the dog contained. So I was out mowing the lawn, and somehow this little dog got loose, and it came running after me, started nipping at my pants and bit me on the back of the ankle, and upset me just a bit, but I got through that. She come back out and pulled the dog back in. But I remember that just because, kind of the things that happen when we work, being bitten hurts just a bit, and whether physically or emotionally, those kind of things kind of stick with us. I don't want to make this a subject of my comments, but I do want to touch just briefly on something that did hurt just a bit, and bring it around to something that hopefully reminds us to be our better selves. In a memo to the council back in March, the chair of Newcastle Watchdogs referred to me in not so kind terms, labeling me as a profit-hungry, cash-hungry person. I trust that's not the perception of the community, and that's not the legacy that I want to leave as I wrap up my career. And I mention this because, not to focus on that, but what concerned me more than the comment is that new technologies and social media allow such comments to be made without personal interactions with individuals targeted, and without regard to how they affect the lives and feelings of others. They're spread en masse, and they're too often believed en masse. I certainly yearn for simpler technologies, but more importantly for simpler times when technology didn't cause us to forget kindness in our social interactions. And social media is just, for me, it just bothers me, that we can be forgetting, who's behind, those messages that we send. So it's important for us to kind of keep that in mind. I want to share, if I may, a short story of simpler times and technologies that has been my moral compass over many, many years. I've shared it with my children, my grandchildren, and it's helped me remember how I might be and serve people better and be a kinder person. So Jeff has pulled up this image here, just in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. Some of you may have never seen one of these things, especially anybody that's watching who's younger. I've actually got kind of a facsimile of a similar thing of this hanging on my wall, believe it or not. So the story's about that. Goes, when I was quite young, my father had one of the first telephones in our neighborhood. I remember well the polished old case fastened to the wall. The shiny receiver hung on the side of the box. I was too little to reach the telephone, but used to listen with fascination when my mother used to talk to it. Then I discovered that somewhere inside that wonderful device lived an amazing person. Her name was Information Please, and there was nothing she did not know. Information Please could supply anybody's number and the correct time. My first experience with this genie in the bottle came one day while my mother was visiting a neighbor. Amusing myself with a tool bench in the basement, I whacked my finger with a hammer. The pain was terrible, but there didn't seem to be any reason in crying because there was no one home to give any sympathy. I walked around the house, sucking my throbbing finger, finally arriving at the stairway. The telephone. Quickly, I ran for the footstool in the parlor, dragged it to the landing. Climbing up, I unhooked the receiver in the parlor and held it to my ear. "Information, please," I said into the mouthpiece just above my head. A click or two and a small, clear voice spoke into my ear. "Information?" "I hurt my finger," I wailed into the phone. The tears came readily enough now that I had an audience. "Isn't your mother home?" came the question. "Nobody's home but me," I blubbered. "Are you bleeding?" "No," I replied. "I hit my finger with a hammer and it hurts." "Can you open your ice box?" she asked. I said I could. "Then chip off a little piece of ice and hold it to your finger." After that, I called Information Please for everything. I asked her for help with my geography, and she told me where Philadelphia was. She helped me with my math, and she told me my pet chipmunk I'd caught in the park just the day before would eat fruits and nuts. And there was a time that Petty, our pet canary, died. I called Information Please and told her the sad story. She listened and said the usual things grown-ups say to soothe a child, but I was unconsoled. Why is it that birds should sing so beautifully and bring joy to all families, only to end up feet up as a heap of feathers in the bottom of a cage? She must have sensed my deep concern, for she said quietly, "Paul, always remember that there are other worlds to sing in." Somehow I felt better. Another day I was on the telephone. "Information, please." "Information," said the now familiar voice. "How do you spell fix?" I asked. All this took place in a small town in the Pacific Northwest. Then, when I was 9 years old, we moved across the country to Boston. I miss my friend very much. Information Please belonged to that old wooden box back home, and I somehow never thought of trying the tall, shiny new phone that sat on the hall table. Yet, as I grew into my teens, the memories of those childhood conversations never really left me. Often, in moments of doubt and perplexity, I would recall the serene sense of security I had then. I appreciated how patient, understanding, and kind she was to have spent her time on one small boy. A few years later, on my way west to college, my plane put down in Seattle. I had about an hour or so between planes, and so I spent 15 minutes or so on the phone with my sister, who was living there now. Then, without thinking what I was doing, I dialed my hometown operator and said, "Information, please." Miraculously, I heard again the small, clear voice I knew so well. Information. I hadn't planned this, but I heard myself saying, "Could you please tell me how to spell fix?" There was a long pause. Then came the soft-spoken answer. "I guess that your finger must have healed by now." I laughed. "So it's really still you," I said. "I wonder if you have any idea how much you meant to me during that time." "I wonder," she said, "if you know how much your calls meant to me. I never had any children, and I used to look forward to your calls." I told her how often I've thought of her over the years, and I asked if I could call her again when I came back to visit my sister. Please do, just ask for Sally." Just 3 months later, I was back in Seattle. A different voice answered the phone. I asked for Sally, and she said, "Are you a friend?" "Oh, yes, a very old friend." "Then I'm sorry to have to tell you, Sally's been working part-time the last few years. She was sick. She died a few weeks ago, but before I could hang up, she said, 'Wait a minute, did you say your name was Paul?' 'Yes.' 'Well, Sally left a message for you. She wrote it down. Here it is. I'll read it. Tell him I still say there are other worlds to sing in. He'll know what I mean.' I thanked her and hung up. I did know what Sally meant. Kindness matters. We remember it, and we extend it to others. You know, a current catchphrase in American politics is "Make America Great Again." I'm not sure what that means because it's too often associated with unkind attacks on fellow Americans. We can't be great unless we're first kind. And that's the legacy I hope to leave and the message I want to share as I now wrap up my career. My very best to each of you and to all the citizens of Newcastle. Thank you.
So you know we're going to call you and say "Information, please." Thank you, Steve. That was amazing.
Thanks, Steve. Very eloquent. Great story. I'll call on our Public Works Director, Jeff Bronze, to give an update on the capital improvement program for 2022 second quarter.
Certainly, that's a tough act to follow. Thank you for sharing that, Steve. I don't have anything prepared. The quarterly update is in your packet, so I'd be happy to entertain any questions. And just recent updates, the contractors mobilized on the T47 project, the Southeast May Creek Park Drive non-motorized improvement project. Out there, at least as of yesterday, was some equipment, and they flagged the right-of-way on the north side of the roadway, but they have not actually started turning any dirt yet.
What's the estimated completion date of that?
Actually, I don't have that. I would guess probably September timeframe.
Okay, so right around school opening, that'll be great.
Yes. One thing, I will mention that there is a full roadway closure necessary just west of 121st, the entrance to Wintry. There's a culvert crossing. You probably don't even realize it because it's, you know, it's the vegetation blocks it, but we're having to build a retaining wall on the north side. And the type of retaining wall, it's a pile, and so they have to bring in a drill rig to do that construction. And due to the narrowness of the road, there's just not enough space to do that. So it's looking like a 21-day closure, and that's probably going to be the end of August timeframe. So we'll have, this will be our third closure in recent time, but so there'll be notice boards up at least 7 days in advance, and as soon as we get the dates locked down, we will share that. But at least the Wintry folks will be able to go east uninhibited. There is a chance that signal will still be there, so it's kind of like the perfect storm. But again, if we can get the closure duration shortened, we will. But just want to give a heads up about that.
Okay. And the school routes will be notified and all of that.
Well, hopefully it won't affect school routes. Hopefully they'll be done before school. Right. That's one of the things we're trying to coordinate now.
Okay. But I want to thank you for moving forward and reopening May Creek Park Drive after some expressed concern over the closure initially, which was only a couple of weeks.
That was
So I appreciate that.
just to be candid, there was a lot of frustration with the contractor. The developer was frustrated with their contractor as well, and they were planning on just getting 2 more weeks, and we said, no, you will not.
No, I appreciate you digging in your heels, so
Yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else?
No, Mayor, that concludes the city manager report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I move the consent agenda be approved.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Griffin, seconded by Councilmember Villasenor to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. No unfinished business, no public hearings. We are on to general business, item 11.1, missing middle housing grant letter of commitment. I will turn it over to Director Osgathorpe. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. There's quite a bit of information about this in your packet, so I'm not going to read back to you what's in there. I just want to kind of highlight some things. You know, as you're aware, there's been quite a concern over what to do about affordable housing in the region. There's been a lot of talk at the state level, particularly about different kinds of housing that we call missing middle. And those are things that, you know, they're not the apartments where we kind of have been leaning on for providing affordability. And they're certainly not the single-family homes that have become so very expensive. These are the duplexes, the triplexes, the fourplexes, et cetera, that you sometimes see, and in many cases often see, depending on the city or the neighborhood, within, you know, your normal residential single-family neighborhoods. We've really kind of got away from that, you know, over the last several decades, and we've made single-family strictly single-family. Again, there's a lot of movement to kind of revisit that and bring back into the single-family neighborhoods things like accessory dwelling units. We have provisions in our code for those. We allow them. We've got certain requirements on them. But even on that level, the state has really been kind of tinkering with whether or not they want to take away our ability to regulate even the design of those. And so there's a lot of talk at the state level about, you know, what they may or may not want to mandate local governments to enact in their single-family zones. So with that, you know, there's been things that have been proposed, pulled back. So we still don't have those mandates down, but there is this grant before us now. This is by the Department of Commerce, and for a city of our size, it's $75,000 that we would use to evaluate, analyze how we would incorporate into at least 30% of our single-family neighborhoods those housing types that I just described, the duplexes, triplexes, et cetera. Right now we do allow a multifamily in our single-family zones if they're reviewed through a conditional use permit. So there's that higher level of review and discretion that our code requires. The idea with this is to make them more easily built, that you would develop standards such that they could be approved just outright permit allowed. And so that would, streamline the process for the builder of those. So this grant requires that this be explored for 30% of the area. There's been some discussion about whether that's the number of lots or the area. We'll have to kind of look more into that, probably both. The thing that I want to stress, however, is that there is no mandate to actually adopt the regulations. I think the state is really anxious for us to consider this. They want us to look at this, and in fact, they're practically wanting to give this money away to the point that they've already actually awarded our grant, subject to us, signing the final agreement, and it also requires a concurrence letter from the council that you're committing yourselves to doing what the grant requires. And so there is a draft letter. It would be signed by the mayor. The council would authorize the mayor to sign this letter on behalf of the council, acknowledging that we're committed to doing the work that the grant requires. I do want to mention that, and first of all, back to what the state has really been pushing for, I think the thing that we really want to not lose sight of is that this may come down as a mandate. And if it does, this grant will at least give us a head start in achieving that and doing the exploration work. If this comes around, and it'll also, by the way, overlap into what we're going to have to look at in our major comp plan update. So this gives us the monies to get a head start on not only that issue if it comes down as a mandate, but also start to work on our comp plan items with some money in hand. The second thing I want to mention is that there are other jurisdictions that are part of ARCH that are interested in joining forces with ARCH. Right now, it's tough to get a consultant. And so the idea with this is that if we could work with ARCH and get just a good consultant on board that would help all of us, that we would probably be more successful in getting the help we need, and also just kind of collaborating the review and the effort. There's some things that are going to have to be very customized to us. Our neighborhoods are different, and there's also a requirement that we look at any what was it? It was social equity issues in housing, make sure there's no discrimination in housing. So those things we'd have to look at, locally to make sure that there aren't any of our own policies that may result in those housing inequities. But in a nutshell, that's the grant. It has been awarded. It's just kind of waiting for us to kind of come back and say we're signing on the dotted line. So I'm happy to answer questions. Again, there's a lot of information, and I don't mean to minimize it, but I'll answer what questions I can.
Thank you. Questions for Director Osgathorpe? Raise your hand, please. Councilmember Clark, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Newing. Thank you, Director Osgathorpe. I was reading through this, so my questions are kind of random, but I do have a few. It sounds like, it was actually not clear to me, when we're awarded this grant, our staff then would be doing the work to investigate the 30% eligibility, or is that correct? Is this Newcastle staff going to take care of this work?
That's where the consultant would come in play. We just don't have the capacity to do this, and in fact, the grant helps to pay for a consultant. I think that's the idea, is that this is really a focused, professional piece of work that we need to bring a consultant on board for. And so joining, again, forces with ARCH is kind of what's driving this.
You mentioned ADUs, and in the information it says cottage housing. Is that an ADU? What is that?
No,
cottage housing?
Cottage housing is this concept where they're small cottages that are, kind of tightly spaced on a large lot. They're just individual homes, but very small, and they're very clustered, kind of an arrangement. It's a concept that's been around for a number of years. I've seen some examples of it in the Linwood area, but there are not many examples out there to look at. I mean, it just hasn't caught on all that much. So this would encourage that kind of housing.
So if we proceeded with, expanding the ability for somebody to do ADUs, that doesn't help us out in this 30% potential.
No, and in fact, there are, I think, 5 or 6 unit types that were listed. And one of the questions that was kind of in the question and answer thing is, do we have to do all the unit types? And the response is, well, it's best if you do all, but you got to look at your community to see if every unit type is applicable or appropriate in any given situation. There may be areas where, if it's a high traffic corridor, that some things may be more appropriate than others. There may be other areas where the setting dictates a different unit type. So that's part of the analysis, is where could these different unit types best be incorporated into the city.
Okay. Yeah, I think you answered my other questions with your presentation. So really, we, in a nutshell, we're getting this grant. We hire a consultant to evaluate these parameters for us, come back with a report, right? Really with minimal impact on our staff, right? I mean, because that's a concern of mine, right?
Sure. Well, and as with any grant and as with any consultant, it requires staff to manage that consultant's work, so there is going to be some impact on staff. But again, that impact is really coming when we're doing our major comp plan update that's coming up in 2023-24. And then this would hopefully give us a head start on that. And again, with the help of Arch, that even further reduces the impact on staff. That's a great help.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Councilmember Phyllis Senior.
Sure, Director Osgood-Thorpe, what do you perceive the final product of this consultant interaction to look like? Would it look like a map that is zoned in a certain way, or are we identifying specific parcels of land? Is it how detailed, or would you expect something like this to be?
Yeah, great question. What I would imagine, and I think something would have to be something like where we would take our existing zoning map, we'd have to identify current R1 or single-family zones, which is R1 through R6, in our current code, and somehow map out which of those R1 through R6 zones are part of this 30%. So we'd have to map that 30% area. Beyond that, it's going to be primarily text amendments to our zoning code, going back in where the permitted uses are specified and what uses are allowed in which zones. We'd have to maybe create some subzones, if you will, in the zoning map or in the zoning code. So it may be, I don't know, we would call it R6 dash something, to specify this missing middle. R6 dash MMM,
Additional, Councilmember Charbonneau, go ahead, please.
Yeah, not specific questions as much as points I wanted to touch on. Thank you, Steve. I talked with Steve a bit about this, and I was quite excited to look at the topic, and I know I harp on the idea of affordable housing quite a bit, but it's important. I think it's for, and I know I say this a lot too, but for folks in my generation, it affects your livelihood, right? I can't do the same things. I can't plan my life in the same way that you all could, quite frankly, because the reality of, can you actually own property? Can you actually navigate it this way, right? There's so much to it, and it's a really, really critical and important issue, and there's a lot to unpack here, and I think it's a very misunderstood issue as well. So I was having a conversation with my neighbor the other day, and he was upset. He was talking about how he didn't want his neighbor's house to be knocked down and in Olympus and have apartments put up right there. And I had to explain to them that that's not what folks are looking to do here. It's taking a affordable housing approach where you see what makes sense in different areas. You study it. It's putting in the groundwork now and putting in that really thorough analysis and groundwork to figure out what can be done where. So I'm a big legislative nerd, and the states of Oregon and California have already essentially done at the state level a mandate of housing, a mandate of eliminating zoning and moving forward with housing. I because I'm, a very fun 25-year-old. I volunteer in 2 different roles where I manage legislative affairs for organizations. And in both those roles, I've had a good deal of exposure. I think it's something that could very realistically happen here, based on what our neighbors are doing, based on everything that's based on the fact that the bill didn't pass here, but the legislature still authorized this amount of funds with this little level of restrictions. So what this work is being done here is really critical to our staff is being proactive about it, Steve is being proactive about it, to go ahead and start to do this work so that it's not all at once. It's not, a drop into cold water. And it is the right thing to do because we need to start addressing these needs. I think for our city's history, we've sort of, Rob Wyman jokingly told me before he left, it was a hush payment to Arch to meet the minimum standard we need to meet, and it's time to stop really kicking this can down the road. Just quite frankly. It talks about in the agreement that the more partner organizations you can get, the more potential funding you can get. I've had folks from Health Through Housing reach out to me in regards to originally the tenant protections I was working on. Who are very interested in this. Arch is getting a consultant through Arch who can work with not just our city but other nearby cities has a plethora of benefits. The Seattle King County Realtors also sent us another letter in support and could be another potential partner organization. The city of Spokane very recently, which is, by the way, a split council, split Democrat, Republican, split fiscally too, 7-0 vote to authorize fourplexes near transit, triplexes near transit, and duplexes citywide. And they did that after thorough research and thorough analysis. Housing is intersectional with everything. It's really critical. And I think we'd be very remiss to sort of swat this down because it's a free means to study. And it's a free means to really critically start to engage with this topic and take some of the labor off our staff and start to work towards this issue we just frankly haven't really touched for quite a long time. I know I can go on quite long, I'm sorry, but I would welcome engagement with fellow council members, and I hope I didn't misrepresent anything as well, Steve.
No, and if I may, probably two more things, and I don't mean to interrupt your flow of conversation here, but the one thing that I think is important to really keep in mind is that if we do this, whether we like it or not, if we do this at least allows you to structure this to best reflect your values. And if the state later comes along and wants to mandate this, we could say, look, we're already doing this, so get out of our space. We've already done this. We've done it our way. So I think this gives us a little bit of a hedge against the state coming down and saying you have to do this their way. So keep that in mind. The other thing too is I should mention, this is important. We got just today the letter. Today's the 18th, I think. From the Department of Commerce. This is the award letter, and it's not just for the $75,000. They've additionally awarded $20,000 to subcontract with community-based organizations. So I think that implies Arch. So it's actually $95,000 in grant here. So.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, go ahead, please.
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, I just have one quick comment if you don't mind. So I think this would be a valuable use of investigating this type of activity, this type of structure in our community. I think a lot of studies need to be done before we can say yes or no to it. One thing I would recommend that council keep in their back of their mind is when we create our legislative agenda in the fall, we need to pay careful attention to the fact that the next legislative session could very well push how we manage our housing in our own community, how the restrictions they come down with, the mandates. I can't caution enough against that, and we really need to work with our lobbyists to preserve local control. I think that's critical to any community, and we're a small community of 4 square miles. Our constituents don't hesitate to come out and say, keep this out of my neighborhood. and they have in the past, and they will again. And I think we really need to focus on preserving control at the local level. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
So I will move to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of commitment to the Washington State Department of Commerce, pledging Newcastle's participation in the Missing Middle Housing Grant as presented in Exhibit 3.
All right, it's been moved by Deputy Mayor Sherlock, seconded by Councilmember Charbonneau, to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of commitment to the Washington State Department of Commerce, pledging Newcastle's participation in the Missing Middle Housing Grant as presented in Exhibit 3. Deputy Mayor Sherlock, would you like to speak to your motion, please?
Yes, thank you. I think the main reason I'm really supporting this is I'm going to just read the last paragraph of the agenda bill, because to me, this is why I'm supporting it. By accepting this grant, the city would be in better posture to oppose the aforementioned legislation that seeks to strip local jurisdictions of their land use authority. The state is threatening to mandate multifamily housing in single-family zones with no consideration for preserving neighborhood character or confirming adequate roads, parking, or utilities are available. By demonstrating that we acknowledge the state's housing crisis and show we are studying potential remedies via local regulations, Newcastle and other cities could begin to solve the crisis ourselves without overreaching intervention by the state that could set a precedent for even more mandates in the future. So I know that was a lot, but that just, I like the idea of doing this ourselves now. I think that if more cities do that, that's really what the state wants to see, is that we're willing to look into it and address it. And I think that's important. So I would like to do that.
Councilmember Charbonneau, anything to add?
I think accepting free money to study this issue is the least we can do. I hope it's the start of more conversations, more serious planning, and more engagement with both our community as well as education efforts for us as council members. There's study sessions we need to be having here. For education for the community, there's public hearings we'd be having here. And I'm glad that we could get this move forward. I appreciate Steve so much. He quite literally told me in his office, I can't see this through, but this is something that I want to take the step on and move forward with. So,
Thank you. Okay. The motion on the floor is to authorize the mayor to sign a letter of commitment to the Washington State Department of Commerce, pledging Newcastle's participation in the Missing Middle Housing Grant as presented in Exhibit 3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, 7-0. Thank you. All right, and remember, we do have that information, please, phone number. Additional public comment, live audience, any public comment out there on his phone? And in our virtual room, nothing, quiet night. Okay, I'll close the public comment, planning calendars. City Manager Larson, what do you have for us?
Thanks, Mayor. You should have received or put in front of you tonight a revised planning calendar as of today, July 19th. I'll quickly go through this. Again, want to announce that we've got the concert in the park resuming tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at Lake Bourne Park. And then we've got the Finance Council Committee on Thursday, July 21st at 2 o'clock here at City Hall, followed by a special council meeting, an executive session at 3:30, the same day on July 21st. The Planning Commission meeting for July 27th, as well as the August 2nd council meeting, have both been canceled. The second one, the council meeting, because in lieu of National Night Out, we obviously encourage everyone in the community to participate to the extent they can. Then we've got the other activities going on with the regular meetings of the Community Activities Commission on August 10th, the council meeting on August 16th, and then if all goes well, we'll have a regular planning commission with a public hearing on August 24th is being scheduled. To be followed that Saturday, August 27th, with the, I guess, the kickoff for the 2023 budget with having a council workshop, which we're looking forward to. The regular council meeting for August 16th The one item of note under discussion, you'll notice that we're going to talk about and bring back the business grant samples. The council, the last time we spoke about the ARPA funding, had asked about bringing back some examples, and I've got management partners, Steve Toller, working on that as we speak. And then upcoming meetings, again, the budget workshop on August 27th, and then we're looking at September 20th for bringing back the pandemic relief plan, if all goes well with the discussion with council. You'll note that in between there is that budget workshop, and potentially, depending on how things roll after the August 16th council meeting, where we show you some of those samples, council may be in a position to want to talk about some of the ARPA issues at the budget workshop as well. And I believe that should be everything, Mayor. I'll conclude my report.
Mike's not on.
You know, I pushed that goofy button. Okay, I apologize. So any questions? I didn't see any. Okay, seeing none, I will adjourn the meeting. And please note, I did try to adjourn it right at 8 o'clock.
Is this a record?
Thank you. It's been a long day, but thank you for making.
Long day, short meeting. I don't know, I would be the council on if they did. So we can be a part of them. So I think Rob